It started with the rain, sharp, sudden, and decently warm for late October. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not emotionally. Not physically. Not morally. But there I stood, skin damp from the sprint across the parking lot, hair clinging to my cheek, and heart pounding for a reason I couldn't name out loud. And then he appeared. Umbrella in one hand. My name in his mouth. "You look like trouble," he said, tilting the umbrella just enough to let me in. I stepped under it like I was stepping out of my life. "You should know, I'm a mother. 2 kids. A minivan that smells like soccer socks and spilled juice boxes. I work part-time at a local boutique, help with the PTA, and keep everything under control. Always. But that day, control slipped. I blame the rain. Or maybe the way his eyes didn't just look at me, they read me. Like he'd already guessed the secret I hadn't admitted to myself. I was starving. Not for food. Not for sleep. But for something. Or someone. Who saw me as more than just mom. His name was Dylan. Not married. No kids. Just the kind of smile that made you forget your wedding vows and question your daily choices. We'd met at a charity auction 2 weeks before, when he bought 3 candles and somehow turned it into a 15-minute conversation about scent and memory and desire. I laughed more in those 15 minutes than I had in the last year. He made me feel something I had locked away. So when I saw him again, standing outside the bookstore while thunder rolled in the distance, I froze. I told myself to keep walking. That I had groceries to grab, homework to check, dinner to cook. But his gaze met mine and held it like a dare. And somehow I took it. The umbrella was wide enough for 2. Barely. His hand brushed my shoulder as we walked, and I felt it everywhere. We weren't talking. Not really. Just circling topics like 2 people pretending not to fall into each other. And the rain kept falling, but not on us. Around us. Like a curtain closing in on a stage. "You always this reckless?" he asked, voice low. "Only when it rains," I said. He stopped walking. Just stopped. And I turned to face him, pulse racing, the air between us thick with the kind of silence that trembles. "I don't think it's the rain," he said. I couldn't breathe. Then my phone buzzed. A message. My oldest. "Mom? Are you coming home soon?" Reality. Like a slap. I stepped back. My heel caught a puddle. He caught my wrist. "Careful," he whispered. But he wasn't talking about the water. And just like that, I knew. This was going to become a secret I carried. But I didn't leave. Not yet. Because standing under his umbrella felt like the first time someone had truly seen me. And I wasn't ready to disappear again. I should have gone home. I should have said, "Nice seeing you," and walked back to my car with my grocery list and my guilt. But instead I stood there under his umbrella, heart knocking against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. "I should go," I said. But I didn't move. And he didn't let go of my wrist. He wasn't holding me tight. Just enough to feel like a question I hadn't answered yet. My skin buzzed where his fingers touched. Not because it was electric, but because it was gentle. Too gentle. Like he knew I could bolt at any moment, and he was offering an out without wanting me to take it. "I know," he said. "But do you want to?" That question hung between us, thick and warm and shameless. Do you want to? No one asks mothers that. No one asks women like me anything with want in it. It's always about what we're supposed to do. Expected to do. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. And maybe that's why I didn't answer. Instead we walked. Not toward my car. Not toward anything I could explain. Just away. The umbrella followed us like a spell. Everything outside it faded, cars, streetlights, time. The rhythm of our footsteps matched. Too slow. Too careful. His arm brushed mine again, and this time I didn't flinch. I didn't apologize. I leaned in. Just slightly. Just enough. He looked at me like I was something rare. Not beautiful necessarily, but interesting. Dangerous. I hadn't felt dangerous in years. I was a calendar, a carpool, a casserole. But under that umbrella I was a maybe. A pause. A breath waiting to be taken. "I shouldn't be here," I said quietly. "I'm glad you are." God, the way he said that. Like he meant it. Like he saw the storm inside me and wasn't afraid to get soaked. We stopped at a small corner cafe closed for the day. He led me to the side awning. Dry. Secluded. And for a moment it was just the two of us in that golden gray light, the soft patter of rain around us like background music. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. I nodded, throat too tight to speak. "I've been hoping to run into you. Every time I drive past that boutique I slow down." I laughed. Too loudly. Too nervously. "That's a little creepy." "Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to see if the way you looked at me was real." He stepped closer. And then silence. The kind that wraps itself around your ribs and squeezes. I saw his hand twitch like he wanted to touch my face, but didn't. He was waiting, letting the space between us speak. I didn't step back, and I didn't kiss him. But I thought about it. Long enough to feel the ache of not doing it. Long enough to know that the decision to go home wouldn't undo the way I felt right now. Because something had shifted, and I wasn't sure I could shift it back. I told him I only had 10 minutes. That was the first lie. We sat in his car while the rain kept whispering secrets against the windows. The cafe was closed and the bookstore was too public, so somehow the most private place in the city became the front seat of his SUV. Dimly lit, radio low, the smell of him settling into my lungs like something I'd been missing without knowing. He handed me a travel mug from the cup holder. "It's just black." "Sorry." I took it. Our fingers touched for half a second. It burned my tongue, but I didn't say a word. Because the heat was a distraction. A reason not to look at him while I felt the way his presence made my body betray me. My knees angled toward him without thinking. My hand rested on the seat between us, too close, too casual to be accidental. He sat with one arm draped over the wheel, thumb tapping a slow rhythm that synced with the pulse behind my ears. "I wasn't sure if I should offer this," he said, gesturing toward the coffee. "Didn't want to cross a line." I smiled. "Dylan, we're way past lines." He looked at me then, really looked. And I saw it, restraint. Like he was holding back 100 different thoughts. Like one more inch, one more breath, and he'd tip over the edge. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he asked, "What are you doing out today?" Another question with no safe answer. "Errands," I said. I needed to feel like someone other than. I trailed off. He filled in the silence. Someone's mother? That hit harder than I expected. Not because it was true, but because he didn't say it with pity. He said it with hunger. Like the idea of me being wanted beyond my responsibilities turned him on. I laughed softly, shook my head, looked down at the mug. "You think that's funny?" he asked. "No," I said. "I think it's dangerous." He shifted closer. Not touching me. Just being there, closer than before. "Do you want dangerous?" he asked. I didn't answer. Because the truth was curling inside me. Hot and trembling and a little bit shameful. I didn't want to wreck my life. But I wanted to feel like I could. And that was worse. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered near my temple, tracing a line that made every nerve in my spine stretch toward him. Still, he didn't kiss me. He was too careful for that. Too smart. But his mouth was close enough that I could feel the heat of what he wasn't doing. And God help me, I leaned in. Not enough to close the distance. But enough to say I might. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I didn't look at it. I just closed my eyes. Because I was holding my breath. And if he kissed me now, I wasn't sure I'd stop him. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was vibrating. Loud in the way only two people can make it when they're on the edge of doing something neither one is allowed to want. I could feel his breath. That close. Not on my skin, but in the air between us, warm, waiting, soaked in hesitation and heat. And still he didn't move. He was giving me the space to choose. Or maybe giving himself permission not to take what wasn't offered. My eyes opened. He was watching me. His gaze soft but intense, like he was reading the pages I hadn't meant to turn. And in that moment I hated how good it felt to be seen. Really seen. Not as a mother. Not as a wife. But as a woman whose chest was rising just a little too fast. Whose lips were parted not to speak, but to feel. And then I whispered, "This isn't who I am." He smiled gently. "No," he said. "But maybe it's who you've been hiding." I should have pulled back. I should have reached for the door handle and told him goodbye, "Thank you, I'll forget this." But my body had already decided what my mind was still trying to deny. His hand moved, slow, deliberate, and landed on my knee. Just the weight of it there sent a jolt through me, like a fuse being lit in secret places. He didn't slide it higher. He didn't grip tighter. He just rested it there, warm and steady, like an invitation I didn't know how to decline. I felt my thighs tense beneath his touch. He saw it, and for the first time I didn't hide my reaction. Because I wanted him to know. I wanted him to know that I was unraveling inside this borrowed moment. That the part of me I'd locked away behind meal plans and bedtime stories and school forms was now sitting in his passenger seat, aching, alive, awake. I should go, I whispered again. But this time I didn't move. And neither did he. Instead, he leaned in slow, torturous inches, and stopped just before our lips could meet. I'm not going to kiss you, he said. Why not? My voice cracked. Because if I do, you won't go home. And we both knew he was right. Because everything inside me was screaming for that kiss. Not just for the heat of it, but for what it meant. For what it would awaken. For how it would tear down everything I'd built to keep myself contained. But he didn't kiss me. He just pulled back barely, and traced a single line down my jaw with the back of his fingers. And I swear I almost cried from the feeling. That touch, light, reverent, electric, spoke louder than any kiss could. Said, I want you. It said, I would ruin myself for you. And worse, it made me want to be ruined. My phone buzzed again. This time I checked it. A picture from my daughter. Her Halloween costume. A smile missing 2 front teeth. A heart drawn in pink crayon. I clutched the phone like it could save me. But nothing could erase the way Dylan was looking at me now. Like he'd already kissed me. In every way but the one that counted. And when I finally stepped out of the car into the fading storm, the air felt colder, sharper, but my skin still burned. Because even though nothing had happened, everything had changed. The next day I told myself it was over. That it was just a slip, a storm-born moment, an emotional mistake I could file away under weakness and don't do that again. I wore guilt like a fresh coat of paint, bright enough to notice, thin enough to peel if anyone scratched too hard. I made the kids pancakes. I folded laundry. I even kissed my husband when he walked in from work, the same way I'd done 1,000 times before. And maybe he didn't notice the pause, the way I lingered too long or not long enough. Or maybe he did, but pretended not to. That's the thing about marriage. Sometimes silence is just agreement in disguise. But Dylan stayed with me. Not in person. Not in voice. In skin. In breath. In the way I stared at my phone and hated myself for checking it every 10 minutes like some teenager, hoping for a message that didn't come. And then 2 days later it did. Just one line. Still thinking about you. My heart stuttered. My stomach turned. And my fingers hovered, trembling over the reply button for a full minute, before I tossed the phone onto the couch like it had burned me. I didn't reply. Not then. I couldn't. Because I knew if I responded I wouldn't stop. And I needed to stop. I needed to. But want is louder than need. And that night, after everyone was asleep, I snuck my phone into the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the cold edge of the tub, and let myself fall into the space we created. Me too, I typed. Send. And the second I did, I knew I'd invited the storm back in. His reply came fast. Let me see you. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a command. It was a promise. And I said yes. 'Cause I couldn't not. We met 3 nights later at a quiet bar tucked behind a flower shop. The kind of place where no one asks questions. Where secrets are paid for with soft lighting and background jazz. I wore lipstick I hadn't touched in months. A dress that hit me in all the wrong or right places. And I didn't bring my wedding ring. He was already there when I arrived, leaning back in a corner booth, a whiskey sweating on the table. And when he looked up at me, I forgot how to walk. I slid in beside him, breath shaky, thighs brushing, heart running. You look, he started but didn't finish, because his phone lit up on the table. And that's when I saw it. A name. A message. From Sophie. With a heart emoji. He grabbed the phone quickly, flipped it face down but not fast enough. My pulse spiked. Not with jealousy. With something darker. You seeing someone? I asked too quiet. He held my gaze. Didn't flinch. Not like that. I laughed. Bitter, soft, disbelieving. She sends you hearts. He leaned in close enough to whisper. And I send them to you. I should have left. God, I should have left. But I didn't. Because it turns out, morality doesn't feel like a fire alarm. It feels like a match in a dark room. And right then I wanted to burn. There's a moment, right before something irreversible happens, where your body knows before your mind can catch up. Where your breath shortens, your skin tingles, and the room around you dims, because all your senses are focused on one thing. Crossing that line. That's how it felt when he placed the keycard on the table between us. No words. Just the sharp click of plastic on wood. My fingers didn't move. My expression didn't change. But my heart, it betrayed me. One heavy thud that echoed in my chest like a warning. Or maybe a drum roll. I wasn't planning this, he said, voice low like a confession. But I didn't want to let you walk away again. I swallowed. Hard. Because I hadn't told him I was married. I hadn't said the words out loud. But I knew he knew. He could read it in the pauses. In the way I never stayed long. In the way I touched my left ring finger sometimes out of habit. The way people do when they're remembering something they used to wear. The air between us went still. I don't know what I'm doing, I whispered. Yes, you do, he said gently. You just don't know if you'll let yourself. His hand reached across the booth, fingers brushing mine. It wasn't a grab. It wasn't even a grip. It was a question. And somehow, without speaking, I said yes. The hotel was 5 blocks away. We didn't talk much on the walk there. Just moved side by side like two halves of a storm finally converging. I could feel the weight of the key in his pocket, like it was burning a hole through his coat, or maybe through my restraint. The lobby was dim, quiet, tucked between office buildings like it existed just for moments like this. The kind that live in the shadows of your life. The kind that you pretend never happened. Elevator doors closed. We were alone. He didn't touch me, but I felt him watching. I was trembling. Not from fear but from recognition. Because I had dreamed about this moment. And now that it was real, I wasn't sure if I was about to come undone or come alive. We stopped outside the door. Room 712. He didn't open it right away. He turned to me, eyes full of something complicated, desire sure but also caution. Respect even. Like he was giving me one last chance to change my mind. My hand moved first. I took the keycard and slid it into the lock. The green light blinked. And the door clicked open. I stepped in. The room was quiet. Sterile. But the air shifted the second we entered. Thickened with everything we hadn't said. Everything we were about to say without words. I stood near the window watching the traffic below. I didn't turn around when I heard the door click shut behind him. His footsteps were soft. Measured. Then silence. And then his voice. I don't want to take anything from you. I turned. Slowly. You already did, I said. He crossed the room. And this time he didn't stop when he reached me. His hands found my waist. His mouth hovered near mine. Still waiting. Still asking. And I leaned in. Not to kiss. But to surrender. Because I had walked into the storm willingly. And I was ready to be struck. Sunlight came in through the blinds like it was ashamed to be there. It touched the edge of the bed, the curve of the chair, the soft rumple of sheets twisted in a pattern that told every truth we didn't dare speak. I lay there, half covered, half remembering, fully undone. And he was watching me. Not like a man proud of what he'd had, but like a man still trying to believe it happened. The air smelled like sleep and skin. There was a quiet hum from the hallway. Maids pushing carts, doors opening, the distant clink of ice machines. All the ordinary sounds of morning. But nothing about this felt ordinary. I looked down at my hands. Same hands that had packed lunches. Wiped tears. Held little heads in the dark during thunderstorms. Now they were holding this lie like something sacred. He reached out, fingertips brushing a stray lock of hair from my cheek. Gentle. Careful. As if even now he wasn't sure he was allowed. You okay? He asked softly. And that question, it nearly broke me. Because how do you answer that when your heart is split in two? One half curled next to him in that hotel bed. And the other somewhere far away, opening cereal boxes and asking why mommy was taking so long to come home from her early errands. I don't know, I whispered. Honesty at last. He sat up, sheets slipping low across his hips, exposing the kind of bare vulnerability that had nothing to do with skin. His chest rose slowly. He looked like he wanted to say something. like maybe don't go or stay a little longer. But instead he just nodded. I get it. And I hated how much he did. Because he wasn't some reckless fantasy. He was real. A real man who looked at me like I was more than the tired version of myself I handed out to the world. He saw the fire, the ache, the woman behind the walls. And I had let him in. Completely. But love doesn't erase consequences. And as I dressed, pulling yesterday's clothes back over this new version of myself, I could feel the guilt settling into my shoulders like a second skin. Tight. Itchy. Impossible to take off. I stood at the mirror. My lipstick was gone. My mascara smudged. But my eyes, they weren't tired. They were wide open. Behind me he stood, buttoning his shirt, watching me through the reflection. Will I see you again? He asked. My chest tightened. God, I wanted to say yes. I wanted to promise him mornings where we didn't have to pretend we weren't betraying someone. Afternoons where we could hold hands without looking over our shoulders. Nights where my name wasn't a secret. But I couldn't say any of that. So I just stepped toward the door and gave him one last look. I don't know what I want anymore, I said. He gave a sad smile. You'll figure it out. And I left. With his scent on my skin. With the truth pressing against my ribs like a secret that didn't want to stay buried. And with one terrifying realization. I hadn't made a mistake. I'd made a choice. It's strange how something that only lasts a night can echo inside you like thunder. I went home that morning with quiet steps and a head full of noise. The kids were watching cartoons. My husband was sipping coffee, scrolling his phone. No questions. No accusations. Just the familiar rhythm of a family morning. Comforting, suffocating, sacred. And I stood there in the doorway, soaked in secrets. Something inside me shifted that day. Not dramatically. Not loud. But like a plate of earth sliding just enough to cause an earthquake later. I kissed my daughter's forehead. I helped my son tie his shoes. I said all the right things in the right tone, and no one noticed that I wasn't entirely here. But I was changed. Not just by what happened in that hotel room, but by how alive it made me feel. You see, Dylan didn't ruin me. He didn't break my home, or poison my marriage, or turn me into someone I wasn't. He reminded me of someone I used to be. Before I became invisible. Before every touch had a chore behind it. Before love became lists and life became obligation. He touched me like I mattered. He listened like I was still interesting. And when he looked at me, he didn't see the role I played. He saw me. The woman who still dreamed. The woman who still felt desire. The woman who wasn't done being wanted. And maybe that's why I've never told anyone. Not because I'm ashamed of what happened, but because no one would understand why it mattered so much. It wasn't about the sex. It was about the awakening. That one night taught me that I was still capable of wanting, of being wanted, of stepping outside the box I'd sealed myself inside, and remembering what it felt like to breathe. I haven't seen Dylan since. He didn't chase me. He didn't beg for more. He just let me go. Like he knew what it was. What it had to be. Collision. Not a story. A chapter. Not a life. And sometimes when it rains I think of him. Of the way he looked at me beneath that umbrella. Of the choice I made. Of the heat that rose between us, wordless and wild. And I ache. Not for him. But for the version of me that only he ever got to see. So this is my confession. Anonymous. Quiet. Unspoken. But true. He didn't save me. He didn't destroy me. He reminded me that I still exist. And that is something I'll never forget.